Hello. How's everyone doing? How's everyone been? Hopefully everybody's had, just whatever kind of day. A good day, good night, good afternoon, or whenever you get a chance to read this or listen to this message. So basically, I'm just gonna talk about certain things that the Holy Spirit wanted me to talk about. This is obviously just gonna be about spiritual warfare. Being engaged in spiritual warfare and genuine souls, obviously, um, doing things at their own pace when they should be doing things at Christ's pace. That's in short why they're bringing so many suffrages and just so much drama, and burdens. I guess I wouldn't say burdens, but I would say more or less just weight on their shoulders is just unnecessary. Just because they're going at face value, they're doing these things at their own pace. Christ obviously wants them to pick the pace up. Excuse me, pick up the pace and do things at His liking, and not be so dependent on your pastors. You got it in the bag. Everything is fine. They don't gotta worry. My pastor said I'm saved by grace through faith, but in reality, your pastor isn't really saved. And I already know how people are. You want to give people the benefit of the doubt that, because this individual's a Christian, or, I don't want to point the finger, or I don't know, I don't want to falsely accuse anyone about these things, but in reality, these things are so simple. And if only these pastors were as strict with the Bible as you are, uh, strict with the Bible, then obviously they would be 100%, Bible believing Christians and not really so compromising. But still, individuals just get into this way of thinking that I go into church, I spit out the bones and I eat the fish or eat the flesh or whatever, and everything should be fine and dandy. But you're also failing to recognize that there's a certain level of work that Christ Himself is already calling you to do. Just like everybody has common knowledge that you're supposed to be reading the scriptures at all times, uh, praying for 3 hours on a daily basis, making time for prayer, making time for practicing Christianity, getting in touch with the real world and back to reality when some of these things are not as easy to practice. Some of these virtues that Christ Himself gave to us in His commandments are not as easy as it looks, or as easy as my pastors say that it is. And obviously, reality hits, and you're just like, okay, being a Christian is a lot more difficult than all the glamour, excuse me, all the glamour, all the glitter, whatever, and everything that my pastor is just attempting to sell to me. When in reality, the real gospel, the gospel that we obviously have examples for in the scriptures, is hardships, tribulation, trials, fires, and just testing the quality of your work and what you really have been doing with your time. Now, obviously, in context, the work is just what have you been practicing that Christ Himself obviously wants you to be practicing at all times. And what have you really been doing with your time? And realistically, I know many individuals even know this as well, that they don't really want to separate themselves and just be alone for like a couple months, 2, 3, 4, 5 months, to just really get back in touch with reality. And obviously, the reality that I'm speaking about is Christ's truths and what it's like in heaven, and just detach themselves and begin detaching themselves from the constructs of the secular lie that obviously are just meant to ensnare you and get you to doubt the miracles, the healing abilities, the speaking in tongues, and everything else the first century church did. So this was essentially the standard. So it should automatically be equated inside of your mind that it's just a given that you should be able to do these things, and that you are able to do these things, and that you should be doing these things. But still, because your pastor isn't really doing this is obviously where doubt creeps in because of the enemy. And just like how I mentioned earlier, the more you engage in spiritual warfare, the easier it's going to be able to see where the enemy is going to just be able, uh, is going to be sent to your life by Christ, to beat you down further in the faith, because that's essentially what is happening. If you would just have a good attitude, a good outlook when you're actually going through these tribulations and these suffrages and everything else in between, right? And these tests of fires of the quality of your work, and your diligence and your consistency and obeying Christ's commandments. Uh, these are obviously going to be the main factors that are going to determine if anything even withstands the fires, or if you built with precious stones, or if you built with precious wood, precious hay, but they were only precious in your eyes. These things were nevertheless quenchable. The fire came in and just burnt them to a crisp. And obviously, the truth hurts. You thought you were actually doing things according to Christ's liking, but nothing sustained the fires, and all you had realistically is just the sincere and genuine faith in Christ's atonement, and in the gospel itself, and that's just the foundation, and that was it. Everything else just got burned up, and all you realistically have. So in the eyes of those in heaven, is very shameful. So that's something that you also need to stop being so naive about. Stop being so, although they're not going to condemn you, the whole practice in itself of you not actually applying yourself more and building with precious stones, and precious jewels and everything else and metals that Christ Himself had commanded us to do already. Um, it's just going to be shameful on your end. Everybody's able to see those types of things, to see those types of rewards that you got. And while another individual who could have attended a church that the Holy Spirit was leading has 10 times more gifts than you, and just obviously because of your own applications and your own efforts, you got nothing. All you have is foundation. And I mean, it's sad and it's sorry, but obviously the rewards in themselves were only an what's the word, meant to obviously prove and show that you actually were practicing, and you were storing for yourselves treasures laid up in heaven, uh, through your obedience to Christ's commandments. So yeah, obviously I've said a mouthful already. There's so much more, that I said that at face value. But nevertheless, you seriously need to really, do these things according to Christ's pace, or else don't bother. He's going to reject all of your work every single time. Your pastors are going to tell you, and they're just going to fluff up your pillow, and essentially, they're just going to make you comfortable in your own abilities, your own work. Christ loves everyone, and everything else in between these types of messages and these types of principles, and you're just going to, excuse me, and you're just going to be living your life just like, well, my pastor's saved. I know that, and I can tell that right away that this individual is saved. But in reality, he's not. Obviously, Christ is requiring the same from you as he's requiring from, he's going to be requiring the same from both of you. And yeah, so grace and peace be multiplied to you, and the love of the Lord Jesus Christ reign inside of your hearts and be with you all. So obviously, you probably watched my videos before, right? And you probably watched the last video, so you're able to see where I'm coming from, where these types of messages are obviously coming from. They're not coming from a condemnatory place, but they're obviously coming from a place where I obviously care. I already learned the hard way with these things. I know what it's like to obviously learn the hard way and to end up falling flat on your face. So there was a lot of trial and error with these types of things, and realistically, this is just the way that it works. I already come to the knowledge that it's not going to be a quick fix, because you're going to be a practicing Christian all of your life. So these trials, that in itself, should just automatically expose the fact that there's just going to be tests, fires, and trials all of your life. They're going to be testing the quality of your work and what you've been really doing with your time. Sometimes you might have to learn a 40-year-old lesson. Sometimes you might have to learn a 2-minute-old lesson. And realistically, the decision is on you and on Christ's mercy and grace. And so Hopefully that you're able to reflect on your own life, your own bad decisions, and that's able to teach you. That way, you're actually able to get some grace and some mercy to be able to hear what I actually am saying. That way, you actually apply the things that I say. That way, you learn the easy way and not the hard way. The easiest example that I could use for this, that is really going to propel you forward and is going to stop the enemy in his tracks, is spiritual warfare. Uh, and I'll just get right into that right away, just because I wish I would have gotten into it a lot quicker, just because of the fact that everything that is realistically the gospel is spiritual warfare. It isn't all just, God is love. While these things are true in themselves, it's only one side of the coin. There's two sides of the coin at all times. Realistically, it's a proverb in itself that the Lord delights himself in balance, and balancing these things out. And realistically, you're not really weighing these things in a balance at all, and these things are not balanced whatsoever, because you're just focused on the God is love part of God, but you're not really focused on the God is wrath part of God, as well as the spiritual warfare side of things, for it to expose you, and what you've been doing with your time, and for it to expose, what the devil is planning in your life and what he's going to plan inside of your life. I mean, these things I already know they're going to be 100% overwhelming, and I am myself am already going through these types of tests as I speak. I'm going through, obviously, refining, prunings, and whatever else, uh, to build healthy habits, but you still haven't built that healthy habit to be able to recognize and see through the enemy's tactics, because you don't realistically engage in spiritual warfare as much as you should, but as much as Christ obviously wants you to be engaged in spiritual warfare. But so yeah, I learned right off the bat, everything is spiritual warfare. Deliverance, that in itself is spiritual warfare, because you're conquering the flesh, or you're conquering darkness with light. So let's say you obviously want to you just want to break some curses, right? You want to break some of these curses that are just stopping you from being able to cast some of these devils out, stopping you from actually being able to stop these reoccurring things from happening inside of your life, and for you to actually be able to loose these graces and these gifts and these blessings. That in itself, anything that is contrary to these graces is just automatically, it's just flesh, and it's a devil in itself. There's just so many testimonies, so many examples in the Gospels for that in itself, to teach us that anything that is good is from God, and anything that obviously, like ailments, diseases, infirmities, and everything else, just is you're able to cast out according to the same type of authority and power that we've received through the atonement because of Christ. You're not going to be able to do it any other way, and that's just the order that Christ himself has set up, to show you where your place is with him as creation, and you not being creator. And that's essentially it. You have to be 100% dependent on Christ, and you have to take, the, what chapter was it in? John 15, the vine parable, and the comparison, 100% literal, that you realistically cannot cut yourself off from the vine and start doing things according to your own liking or your own independence way of thinking. And you have to obviously abide in the vine. You have to depend on the vine to bear fruit of your own, or you're not going to be bearing anything. Among other things, obviously everybody has just common knowledge in our own lifestyles. You have to get up to go to work at 6 in the morning. Some people aren't morning people. That's fine. Some people need to set up, alarm clocks, like 10 of them, before they actually are able to finally get up. These individuals need deliverance 100%. I used to live through that same type of way of thinking, where I needed to have more than one alarm clock to wake me up. That way I actually am able to wake up. But eventually, obviously, because of God's grace and because of Christ, I was able to really understand that 5 minutes isn't really going to uh, make an impact for the rest of the day. When I wake up, I already live a type of lifestyle and I have lived a type of lifestyle where no matter how many hours I sleep, I still feel tired throughout the day. Sometimes, obviously, I want to take a nap. If I go to work, if I went to work, but whatever, right? These things are just whatever. But so no, I obviously have that virtue in itself. For me to wake up as soon as I wake up, and no more 5 minutes, no more 10 minutes, no more 15-minute alarm clocks. As soon as I wake up, I'm up, and I go straight to the food. Go straight to the breakfast. I eat and I drink my coffee. I drink my tea, and I get dressed, brush my teeth, wash my face, and obviously I go straight to work and I do whatever else I have to do, and I'm ready for work. I'm working hard and everything else in between, right? But yeah, then just whatever. Those are the same types of principles that you obviously need to be living in and abiding in. But Christ Himself just wanted me to say that that way you actually are able to, let go of some of these sins that are inside of your life that you don't realistically view as sin just because you need deliverance. There's some type of demon inside of your life that is causing you to obviously live in that way of thinking because you're not practicing that virtue. It's either light or darkness. Hopefully this theme is becoming evident inside of your mind that because you need deliverance, you obviously need to get rid of these habits and the habit of not viewing the sins that Christ Himself sees as sins, and your habit of not obviously obeying the Proverbs and the law of wisdom itself, because you're delivering yourself, you're getting rid of this way of thinking, and you're obviously viewing things how Christ views them and how God views these things, that you're getting rid of these nasty sins and iniquities that were inside of your heart, and which is essentially you're being refined, purified, uh, and delivered. So hopefully these things you're able to finally recognize and see that the type of lifestyle that you're living and your own definitions, and sure, you're obviously destroying your own self. Your own intelligence is betraying you. Is what I was trying to say. So just let it go and give it to Christ. Pray to Christ right now. Just tell Him that I know that my own intelligence is betraying me, and because of that, I ask that you help me, that you guide me, and that you continue, obviously, refining me, pruning me, and getting rid of all the dross that obviously needs to be removed at your pace and according to your liking. Something along those lines. Now, obviously, you don't necessarily have to pray these types of things. It's the faith behind it. You could pray through groans too deep for words, like it's written in the scriptures. I'm sure that's 10 times better than that little prayer, but Christ knows what you need. Christ knows everything that you know. You're going to be judged according to that light. And so, obviously, give it to Christ because you seriously need help. Spiritual warfare. So these things in themselves, if you're not really able, they automatically just expose all the plans of the devil in itself. I'm not gonna say all, but obviously most of these plans that come inside of your life. For example, once you actually begin engaging yourselves in spiritual warfare, you're able to see why you obviously need so many alarm clocks. I can see it from a mile away at this point, because of God's grace and His gifts. At the whole point of these alarm clocks, and it's good to think ahead, right, to not get into that point and not get to that point. And the whole purpose of all of these alarm clocks is to get you to obviously be late for work. Next thing you know, you get fired from your job and you can't support yourself. And the devil's a lot more sneakier than you think. And just because of, you gave some sort of foothold to the devil because of sin, 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes, whatever, how many more minutes you want to lay in bed. There was some sort of iniquity. That's why the devil was able to come inside of your life. Had you had some good integrity, some good moral uprightness, you would have gotten up right away, went straight to the food, straight to the coffee, got changed and dressed, and you would have kept up with the same type of virtue and the same type of practice forever and ever, right? Until you ended up, your life was over. But obviously, no, the opposite happened. The devil was trying to get you to compromise little by little. This is just one side of things, and this is just one little example that hopefully you're able to start recognizing and seeing. That way, you're actually able to see that this really isn't a game, and that the devil is seriously just, under the guise of temptation and under the premise of temptation itself. Excuse me. He's obviously, you're in short, obviously submitting and selling your soul to the devil until finally you obviously just let him walk all over you. You have some sort of infirmity, some type of disease. God forbid, right? These things are typically bad. Or he just uses you for somebody else's plan, and he just uses you. He just uses you for his plan because you let him in short. Uh, it's embarrassing. It's humiliating to be in that way of thinking, and from that point of view as well. But so spiritual warfare, and these pastors that obviously are preaching these types of messages. Something that Christ just brought to my attention was the fact that there's a lot of sincere and genuine believers, but the fact is that they're not really being shepherded correctly or properly. There's so much iniquity that these individuals just have, and that Christ himself wants them all to be engaged in the deliverance ministry because they're not realistically able to discern what is sin, discern what is spiritual, especially, and discern what is carnal. And because of that, they're realistically just judging these things according to their own hearts and according to their own knowledge, and they're falling for these sins and these traps that the devil is setting up for them. They're wondering why they have so many problems and why they have so many suffrages, when in reality it's just their own way of thinking and their own intelligence, which Christ wants them to let go. He wants them to let go of their own understandings. How they obviously read the scriptures. They don't get all of the knowledge and the information, but they already develop they get an idea or a general notion of the scriptures and what Christ himself wants, and from that they develop this whole theology around it and centered around it. They develop and they have this doctrine around it, when in reality they need to read all the scriptures themselves, wait until they gather all the facts and the information to ensure they obviously are rightly dividing these things and this in their proper context. While some of these things, obviously, like loving your enemies, blessing those that curse you, and just Christ's commandments, they don't really require a theology. That is your theology. Christ's commandments is your theology. Some of the more mysterious things to you that you realistically don't really understand is need to obviously you need to wait but not be stagnant at the same time. With those types of things and not really develop an exegesis or a doctrine or a philosophy, just because of the fact that on Instagram everyone has their own doctrines. Everybody's walking alone. Everybody believes they're walking towards the light and they're doing God's will and God's favor. While some of them obviously they do post things that are truth, they also post things that are just complete there's just heresy, and everybody's like, what are you doing? Stop spreading this heresy. Everybody knows that hell is eternal. Everybody knows that you can't pray to idols. Everybody knows that Mary is the mother of God, well, and the mother of Jesus, but Jesus is God, but not physically God. God doesn't have a mother. Yeah, we all know that. But obviously, they're referring to Jesus's incarnate life, and so many other different things that obviously individuals just fail to obviously put apply common sense to, which in reality Christianity is no different than the real world. You realistically do have to apply common sense to the things that you read in the scriptures, why things were done the way that they were done, historical context, and just obviously traditions in themselves, for you to really be able to get a real understanding of the things that you obviously are reading in the scriptures, why Christ said the things that he said, and to realistically help you understand the perfect plan of salvation that Christ and God and the Holy Spirit, right, had agreed to before anything was created. So this is all part of God's perfect plan of salvation. Everything is meant to be spiritual, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. These things are nevertheless going to be spiritual in itself, but uh, that's just how everything was created. Everything was created to be spiritual because God is a spirit. And so you realistically need to view these things with different eyes and stop viewing these things with the secular lie his eyes. And yeah, so humble yourself down. Hopefully you're able to see, you're able to learn the easy way, and not the hard way. As I mentioned earlier, that some of the things that I obviously wish I would have did a lot sooner was just engage in spiritual warfare. And something that I genuinely wish I would have did a lot sooner is just to fight anything and everything that the devil throws at me, and realistically just begin walking in places where the devil has obviously just um, forced me to just stay there for years and years and years, and finally taking the right foot forward and moving forward out of that stagnant, stalled out, lazy way of life that and thinking that I obviously was living, right. That's every individual in the body of Christ needs to realistically apply that to what they need to apply it to and what they should, and really begin taking the first steps out of that stagnant, and I mean I want to say like a prison cell, just because that's a short what it's kind of like. Fear in itself has gripped many individuals, and fear is obviously one of is just so deadly for the demons to use against the ignorant, and those that are ignorant about how, it's so easy to control an individual through fear. You just get them afraid to obviously uh, to fear the repercussions of what could possibly happen to them if they continue obviously engaging themselves in spiritual warfare, fighting the enemy, or just doing things that genuinely irks the devil and genuinely frustrates him. Everybody already knows, everybody's heard countless stories about if you don't get right with God before you actually engage in spiritual warfare, he's going to deliver you to witches, and just so you could get killed. That in itself should teach you that I need to be on my toes, how holy God is, and that I realistically can't play games whether I engage in spiritual warfare or not, because he's still going to hold me to that standard, because I already have the knowledge that I just heard through my ears. But still, individuals play dumb. They're just like, well, I'm just not going to get in spiritual warfare. But God already knows that you know that. And because of that, he already automatically wants you to engage in spiritual warfare. So hopefully you're able to see that you're not as sharp as you think. And because you're not as sharp as you think, you play dumb with a lot of situations that you realistically uh, don't recognize that you're playing dumb towards. But God already sees from a mile away. He sees that you're playing dumb and you're trying to ride your way out of that situation and not doing any work for the kingdom of God and the kingdom of light. And you're suffering the consequences for it, and you're paying for it in short just because of your own way of thinking. I know it sounds so sad and so pitiful for yourself, and I'm sure individuals get in this way of thinking where they start feeling guilty. But guilty, God isn't going to make you feel guilty whatsoever. That's something that you also need to detach yourself from. God isn't going to condemn you whatsoever either. That's another thing that you need to detach yourself from. God 100% is loving, but realistically, he just wants you to change. He doesn't want you to feel sorry for yourself. And meanwhile, you're stuck in this sorry state for 2 weeks, and you still haven't even done a single thing to finally change or finally even begin moving in the right direction of change, in the right direction of repentance. He wants action. He wants you to obviously just start changing, and he wants you to just uh, not fall for the trap of the devils, to keep you and prevent you from repenting, and keep you and prevent you from changing into something that is according to Christ's image. But yeah, that's one thing that you definitely need to detach yourself from. Discouragement, doubt. These things are automatically just going to come inside of your life, to obviously get you to stop with any, deadly or threatening momentum to the kingdom of darkness, or to finally, obviously, uh, mm, anything that would actually halt you or prevent you from being a real Christian and disciple of Christ. And so hopefully you're able to see and beginning to see these tactics that the devil is throwing inside of your life, that anything and everything is being thrown inside of your life, and anything and everything that is contrary to your discipleship with Christ and what the disciples were doing in crisis times in the Acts of the apostles, and anywhere else in the New Testament, that any of these works themselves that they obviously were doing, and they're going to throw inside of your life to prevent you from doing these things themselves. Uh, Doubt. Are you sure that you're able to do that? Are you sure you have the Holy Spirit? And anything else? It's like, yes, I know I could do these things. If they could do it, I can do it too. These things are so easy and so, self-explanatory in the scriptures. It's not all dependent on faith. It's not all dependent on Christ's timing. It's not all dependent on whenever God likes it. I need to really take action. I need to do it now. And realistically, it is now or never for most, if not all of you. And if you never begin or you never decide to actually uh, to really hearken to that and live by that principle that is really now or never, I'm sad to say you're probably never going to get out of that way of thinking either. So just start now. Uh, and so the devil's just throwing everything that he possibly can to prevent you from being anything remotely close to what the disciples of Christ's times were doing. Uh, the type of ways of thinking and states of mind that they were living, uh, and the type of spirits. Excuse me. The type of spirits they were obviously operating in. Uh, and you could do with that information whatever you want to do with it. I mean, you could just reflect, look back on your life, look at your life and your current situation that you're living in right now, and just see how the enemy was, well, not the enemy, how you realistically just let him walk all over you, because that's what it realistically was, through your own way of thinking, your own philosophies, your own knowledge, your own understandings. God is condemning me. I know this is approved in God's eyes if I'm penitent and contrite, but realistically, you've been in that way of thinking for way too long and for way too much time that you haven't even changed whatsoever or even bothered. Uh, cleaning yourselves up finally, at least grabbing the dish soap, at least grabbing the laundry detergent and washing your robes white. You haven't even done that. You've just wallowed in your own filth and your own, stained clothes, and just crying and sobbing. Oh, I hope the Lord looks at me with mercy and with favor. That He absolutely loves me, and He knows the situation. He knows my heart, how sorrowful I am. But He wants you to knock it off. That's not even going to work in the real world, or in our world. Can you imagine if you just did that with your landlord? You're just like, oh, pity me, pity me. What am I going to do? And you just sit there, just stuck. I don't have a job. And you just stay in that way of thinking for 2 months, 3 months. The landlord gave you an extension. He gave you 2 extra months to find a job, but you just going to continue, um, just feeling sorry for yourself and just crying in your own hands. Hopefully that's able to open your eyes and teach you that these types of principles are still, we're governed under these same types of principles in God's eyes, in Christ's eyes, under obviously the premise and the principle of the type of light that we have received. Because Christ knows that we know it now, He's obviously going to judge us by that same exact principle. He doesn't want us being stagnant ever, and He does not want us ever not applying these first 7 principles, which is our reality and our plane, to the second heaven and to things that are actually spiritual, or to the third heaven. which more or less you need to be applying it to, because the third heaven in itself, I know it seems like a quick fix, but it's so simple and so easy. It just is so much light that is able to expose the darkness and all the works of wickedness that are inside of your life, for you to actually be able to see what the devil is actually doing. Anything that is contrary to your heavenly image and your heavenly life, automatically the devil's work, and your own complacency and your own willingness to submit to the devil. That's essentially it. You just submitted to the devil, and because of that, that's why your life is so different from the type of life that you would have in heaven. Obviously, some parts of it are part of God's perfect plan of salvation, and there's realistically nothing that nobody could do about it. Not even Christ could do anything about it. God's perfect plan of salvation was that he should die, that God should die, and he couldn't get himself off the cross either. That's just not going to happen whatsoever. You just have to, be thankful, be like, okay, this is part of God's perfect plan of salvation. That's fine. I appreciate it. I love you. But don't be foolish either. Don't be in that way of thinking where you're just like, oh yes, thank you, curse me, Lord. Obviously recognize that a curse is bad. Recognize that you obviously got him infuriated and you got him angry. And it did change. Excuse me. So, yeah, God's perfect plan of salvation. Um, mm, that's obviously why everything is happening, right? What else the Holy Spirit? What else He wants to talk about? He said to engage in spiritual warfare. That way, you actually are able to be better Christians. You're actually able to be the types of Christians that Christ Himself has already seen through the ages, through generations, and that you realistically are not living up to that type of standard that Christ Himself wants you to live up to. If they were able to do it, what's your excuse? What's your real reason why you're not realistically able to do that? There's just so much fear inside of Christians' lives that they love their lives. That is forcing them to obviously love their lives 10 times more. They're not really equating these types of things in themselves, that they genuinely and sincerely need deliverance from anything that Christ Himself wants them to do, and anything that is just halting them and preventing them from actually doing and obeying Christ's commandments. I mean, these things are so self-explanatory and so plain to see once you actually are engaged in deliverance. Once you're actually able to see that these things are real themselves, that everything is spiritual and everything is spiritual warfare as well. But obviously, you justify yourself way more than Christ will ever justify you, and that's why you're in the situation that you're in right now. And way too many people give you way too many sugar-coated messages that you're just living this type of lifestyle where they're just justifying you, they're giving you the benefit of the doubt that, oh, you wavered from the faith a little bit, and because you actually did, Christ isn't mad. You kind of backslid a little bit. These things are so easy in the scriptures. Christ realistically didn't give any place or foothold for any of these preachers to preach any of the type of messages that they're actually preaching. He was crystal clear. He said, narrow is the way. Many will try to enter heaven, and they're not going to be able to. But still, individuals just think that everybody in the congregation is going to make it, and maybe to an to an extent, right? That not everyone in your congregation is going to make it, but still, is your pastor even going to make it? Is the real question that you need to be asking, and that everyone that is even going to church currently needs to be asking. There's so many Christians that aren't even pastors, so many Christians that aren't even preachers or shepherds or whatever the case may be, uh, that are doing 10 times more than what your pastor is doing, what your preacher is doing. And still you justify these types of individuals. You say that because this individual somehow got this title, that he knows what he's talking about, but realistically that's a foolish way of thinking, and a foolish way to live by. And the standard realistically is just in the scriptures themselves. Whatever they did, Christ himself is going to hold you to that standard. And even worse, if you actually read the scriptures themselves, because people haven't even read all of the scriptures, or even some of the scriptures that you have read about some of these accounts and testimonies in the lifestyles, and because of that they receive more graces uh, for being Christians and just beginning in their Christian walk with Christ. But you have, and automatically Christ is going to judge you by those same type of standards. But the devil obviously comes inside of your life to test you, to see how firm you are in the faith, and the things that Christ himself has said, and the examples that Christ himself has shown you to be truth, and has shown you to be true, uh, for you to not give the benefit of the doubt to the pastor or the preacher. It's just black and white. It's whatever the scriptures say, and that's essentially it. So still, the choice will still be on you to either, take it to the Lord in prayer and do it now, or wait and you never do it. So, it's now or never, and you realistically need to recognize how many situations and how many instances the never has applied to in your life, where you wish, or you look back and you're like, I really haven't even started, not even once, not even yet. And sadly, you're able to see that it's realistically now or never, and you really need to put the pep to your step and do these things and stop doing these things to your own pace, and to your own liking. And, oh well, Christ knows. I just have to kick my feet up, and I earned a little bit of rest because Christ knows that my feet are tired, or I just start doing these things according to Christ's pace. He knows what you're capable of, and you're attempting to cheat him, and you're attempting to rob him of what he already knows that you're fully capable of, and the type of lifestyle that you want to live and that you can live, but you don't want to actually put in the efforts to be able to do any of those things because it's too hard for you, it's too much work for you. I don't want to do it. I've seen it. I'm already comfortable at doing this type of uh living this type of work and doing this type of work, and Christ hasn't cut me off yet. But realistically, that's 100% lukewarm. You need to get out of that way of thinking right away that it isn't lukewarm, because you're judging it and you know how to judge righteously, when in reality anything that isn't what Christ knows that you're capable of is lukewarm, and that's essentially it. I know it seems overwhelming, but it's only because you haven't realistically put in the efforts to actually begin doing it. But once you actually begin practicing it, the more you practice, practice makes perfect, and you're actually going to excel. You're going to, obviously you're going to look back and going to be like, wow, why didn't I do this sooner? This is so much easier than I thought, and it was all on you and nobody else. Just do it. That's how I was in spiritual warfare. When I first started in spiritual warfare, it was just so overwhelming. I have to fight everything and anything, and now I got to the point where obviously it's like, what aren't I fighting? What do I need to apply these types of things to? Where are the bigger battles? What are the biggest battles? Uh, and let me fight those right away. Let me do the hard stuff first and the easy stuff later, and just keep living by that. I keep practicing that same exact virtue. So I'm gonna break these curses because obviously these curses are just there for that specific purpose. It's just to stop you from actually beginning to live those types of lifestyles and practice these types of virtues. And now obviously to cast out these legions, to cast out these demons that are inside of your life that are just there for that exact purpose. There's just so many roadblocks, so many dead ends that have been placed there, and to stop you and prevent you from actually doing anything to the kingdom of darkness. It's becoming a threat to the devil. It sounds crazy. It sounds so unrealistic, almost impossible for you because of the amount of work that you've been doing at this time. You know you're living in sin, and even though you know you're living in sin, you still have no urge or desire to actually get out of that filth and out of that iniquity, and you just continue just using grace as a crutch, when in reality grace is not a license to sin. So hopefully, again, another message in itself that is able to open your eyes, where you're able to see some things that you're not able to let go, some things that you're not able to cut out, and some things that obviously need to be refined and removed out of your life. In Jesus Christ's name. So obviously now I'm casting out these demons, right? Because or else you're just going to stay there. You broke the seals, you broke the curses, but now they're just lingering and they're just waiting for you to cast them out. And I pray that the graces and the blessings and the gifts are loose inside of your vessel to ensure that it begins the process. That way you're actually able to, form these healthy habits 100%. You get started now. Or there's no point in reading or listening to any of my messages. Amen. I'm going to ask Christ, all these tools and all these assets in themselves are only meant to obviously perfect your eternal character in Christ. These curses that are now been broken, so you can actually cast these devils out, are now the means for you to actually be able to stop letting these things. Well, they're going to stop you from obviously engaging in sin, from practicing sin, from stopping you from stopping obeying Christ's commandments. Your will is cursed. That's why you got angry. You had a generational curse from your ancestors and from your fathers. And realistically, it just got passed on to you, and you're just living this type of lifestyle. Like, this just runs in our family. We're just hot-headed, we're short-tempered, when in reality, it was a curse for not obeying the law of Moses. And definitely, Christ already said in the book of Deuteronomy, how if you don't obey the law of Moses or any of the things that God himself has commanded you to do, you're obviously going to be hot-tempered. He's going to drive you mad and make you insane and impatient. That's just one of the curses for not obeying the law of Moses. There's just other ones: depression, insanity, bipolar, being unstable, being mentally unstable. What else? All the really horrific ones where the mothers begin eating their children. And that's essentially what's happening in this nation. These mothers are obviously absolutely going crazy. And it's just getting to that point, and nobody realistically wants to say that or you know admit it, but it's because of the prayers of the saints that it doesn't get to that point, not because of these individuals are able to hold themselves back, because they're not realistically able to hold themselves back whatsoever. It's only because of God's grace and mercy and this perfect plan of salvation. But still, all these tools and all these assets, these are just the hammers and the nails to build your house. Your house is you. Deliverance is the hammer. Your own willpower and your own willingness to be able to cast these devils out and to actually break these curses up are the nails, and everything else is just other means. You actually asking Christ is the plumbing. You actually praying and you actually reading the scriptures is the electricity, the electrical, whatever it's called. And the gas is I don't know, but regardless, all these things themselves are supposed to form and build your eternal character. Fruits, you perfect your fruits through obedience and to Christ. The more you actually want to obey Christ, the more fruits you're going to perfect. Uh, the more fruits you're obviously going to bear. The more knowledge of the scriptures you have, the more you're obviously going to be able to be refined and pruned, and it's only going to benefit you 100%. But you continue relying on your own understanding and your own knowledge, and you're going to be playing these types of games with God, and He's just going to throw you in the lake of fire. So really consider that's a possibility, that Christ is going to throw you in the lake of fire. That way you're actually able to see and notice that you need 100% definite change, or die. The reason why Christ himself said that he was going to spew them out because they're lukewarm is because they're not hot or cold. That day is going to come eventually. I know you live in this type of lifestyle where you're just like, I know I need to be doing a lot more. That's a red flag. That's lukewarm. I know you're living this type of lifestyle where you look back and you're like, man, I remember when I used to be on fire for the Lord. I remember when I used to do so many things, but I just got into this point where this Christianity walk is just so easy and so simple. Yeah, that's 100% lukewarm. But yeah, Christ himself just wants me to tell you that you need to ask him what is. Maybe you shouldn't ask him because that's scary in itself, because now you're actually asking him to pull up your file of sins. God is judge, Christ is judge, so you're obviously going to be rebuked for all of these sins. Uh, so definitely deliver yourselves. Begin the process of delivering yourselves. Don't, you know, don't condemn yourself through your own tongue by saying, "Oh, you're right, I am a fornicator," or "Oh, you're right, I am kind of lazy." Obviously, recognize that God is holy. God is a holy God, and any one of those little sins that you wanted to bring up to Christ, you could have been killed for. Uh, his anger waxed hot, and that's it. So many demons. The angel that was sent to kill you couldn't get to you. Yeah, right. He just used the demon instead to kill you. So, uh, fight, engage in spiritual warfare. Uh, keep emphasizing and prioritizing the spirit and your eternal character. That way you actually are growing and maturing. In context, right? You need to be fighting and engage in spiritual warfare at all times. Fear is a deadly control tactic and a deadly means to be able to manipulate anyone that's ignorant of how powerful fear actually is. Get rid of it. It's just iniquity. You're being tempted. But if you actually end up falling into that temptation that, oh, actually, I'm scared, then that's an iniquity. That begins to be a heart issue. And you're going to pay for that sin, just like how you're going to be paid for all the virtues that you practice. And have practiced. I mean, you know yourself better than I do. You know what type of trials and tribulations you always consistently fall for. So, you need to hit that first. It's a sin to entertain wicked thoughts. Deliver yourself from that. Because you're just hearing thoughts. You're not even thinking them. You're a new creation in Christ. And that's just basically self-explanatory. Everything is new about you. Your way of thinking, your habits, and the sinful practices are no more. You're 100% perfect in Christ's eyes, but because you realistically don't have that type of knowledge and it's not really embedded or ingrained inside of your head for you to be able to see what is actually happening in the spirit realm or in the second heaven, that you're just being tempted by these demons and they just come inside of your life because you continue justifying yourself and you realistically don't apply that to your life, that you're 100% new. Don't look back or you're going to turn into a pillar of salt like Lot's wife. um you continue just falling for the same old mistakes that you've always fallen for and realistically never changing and wishing that you could obviously change and be a better person, but you are a better person, you are a new creation. You just have to stop hearing and stop yielding to these devils that are coming inside of your life to tempt you and to obviously finally break the cycle, uh and realistically really view it for what it actually is, that you're just hearing thoughts at that point. And that's it. I mean, it's so simple, it's so easy, but because you haven't realistically have begun doing that, it's overwhelming. You're like, when is this going to start? When is this healthy habit going to stick? It's coming, but you definitely need to start. Fear the Lord, humble yourself down. I don't even know what else to talk about. I guess this video is over. Thank you, buddy. Have a good day. Fight. Engage in spiritual warfare.